the babies. I usually say for the children today, for the children, for the babies. I was telling our colleagues that as they gather here, on the way in, we were driving behind a truck this morning and said, for the babies on top. It had nothing to do with what we're dealing with now. It was just a regular delivery check with things for the babies. But that's the centerpiece of all of this now. Our babies, the nutrition they receive when they are very young has such an impact on their entire lives. The security their families feel about taking good care of them is what our country is about. Today, the House Democrats are unveiling a new legislative agenda to ease the unconscionable infant formula shortage. There are two bold bills that we have. You'll hear about them. Bobby Scott, the chair of Ed and Labor, is on the floor with the Workforce Development bill, but he and Congresswoman Jahana Hayes have worked very hard on a bill that you'll hear about that talks about the WIC program. We're very honored to have on our side of the aisle returning a former member of the House, of whom we are very, very proud of her leadership and service, and now the chair of the Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee of the Senate, which has the jurisdiction that Ed and Labor has over here to talk about that legislation that they have, as well as how it impacts the WIC program. And of course, Rosa DeLauro on appropriations as the chair. Rosa, before she was the chair of the almighty, powerful whole committee of appropriations, one time she was chair of the Ag Subcommittee, which has largely nutrition in it, so she knows of this issue well, and we'll talk about the appropriations bill coming forward on that. Mr. Pallone will be having hearings on this, and as others, Mr. Leader has informed me that Carolyn Maloney, and you may want to speak more to that, will be having hearings in the Oversight Committee as well, but we're going to hear from Mr. Pallone today. None of this could be possible without the speed and efficiency of getting this legislation to the floor in very short order. And the minute the leader heard about this issue and took it up with our chairs and the chairs committee, we were on our way. So thank you, Mr. Leader, for your knowledge of this issue, your appreciation for the urgency of it all, and for giving us this opportunity to vote on these bills this week. It's now my pleasure privilege to yield to the distinguished Democratic Leader of the House, Mr. Hoyer of Maryland.
Gives me special status with somebody from Maryland. I am pleased to be here with the Speaker and Madam Speaker. Thank you very much for grabbing this and going with it. I had a meeting with the chairs a week ago, and Rosa DeLauro, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee, of course, meets with us, and she had done a lot of work on this and brought the facts to our attention and the problems to our attention. So I asked all the chairs that had any kind of jurisdiction to look at this. Obviously, the Appropriations Committee has a special role in terms of making sure there are resources to address this problem, but also Chairman Malone, Chairwoman Maloney, who is the Oversight Committee, Bobby Scott, the Education and Labor Committee, and a number of other committees, as the Speaker has pointed out, have jurisdiction to deal with these questions. There is nothing more critical to families than being able to feed their children. Throughout history, we have heard stories of parents living in poverty who will forego every need of their own just to get a little food or milk for their young children to survive and hopefully thrive. The circumstances that led to the current infant formula shortage will surely need to be investigated, and I know that will happen both in the Appropriations Committee and other committees. Right now, however, Congress's focus ought to be on how to address the challenge and make sure all babies in America can get the nutrition they need in the first vulnerable months of life. I go to a grocery store called McKay's in Charlotte Hall, Maryland, a little community in southern Maryland, St. Mary's County. And I am amazed at the bareness of the shelves. And I don't have any young children with which I live, but my granddaughter has not infant children. She's 2 now, my youngest great-grandchild. But I think to myself, a young mom with infant children looking at those shelves and then having to go online and try to find some place where she can be confident that she has healthy food for her baby. That's why the House is moving forward to craft legislation led by Chairwoman DeLauro, Representative Hayes, Bobby Scott. Frank Pallone will be doing that. He's having a hearing next week when we have a committee week. Mothers across the country are looking to us for help, and we will not force them to face this crisis on their own. We're on their side. We'll see who's on their side when we vote on this legislation. I hope my Republican colleagues will be filled with what Shakespeare called the milk of human kindness. Today he may say the milk of human health or the milk of human survival. So I hope my colleagues will join with us to move swiftly in addressing this pressing challenge. Let's get this done together, and let's get it done fast. So I want to thank all my colleagues, and I want to thank Senator Stabenow, who is the chair of the Ag Committee in the United States Senate, for the work that she is doing. And I know she's going to be speaking herself, but we're glad that she's here as a partner in making sure that moms will be able to feed their infants.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I just have to thank the Speaker. I have to thank every leader that is up here for the focus, the sense of urgency, the understanding of what is going on. And, you know, I know that with a new baby, you just want to hold them close. And not be frantically running through the grocery store or going online trying to find out whether or not you can get food for your baby. And so we understand that, and we are laser focused. I'm so pleased with Congresswoman Hayes, with Chairman Scott, to be focusing on the WIC program, which is about half of the babies in our country who get their food, moms and babies, through the WIC program and the baby formula. This is very, very important. We are working together on a bill, and we'll be jointly both on language and hope that we can move this quickly, not only in the House, where I know they will move quickly, but in the Senate as well. I do want to say that when all of this came about, I very much appreciate the moment that USDA was notified. Secretary Beals acted quickly. I appreciate that. There are issues of making sure that they know through FDA what is happening when, so they can move quickly. But I very much appreciate that. I appreciate the president and what he's doing. We want to make sure there's more flexibilities. For example, when a family in Traverse City goes to the grocery store and there's only one brand on the shelf right now, and if it's not the approved brand under WIC, there's a problem. But USDA has said we're giving them the flexibility, and we want to make that permanent, that they can purchase what is available, safe and available. So there's a number of flexibilities that we are working on that are very, very important. And we want to make sure that when there's a shortage and there's a situation, that it's all hands on deck in the federal government. All the partners are talking to each other, and all of them are moving quickly. So I just want to thank all of my colleagues who are here, and proud to be your partner. This is something that Leader Schumer cares deeply about. We met in our leadership team about this last night, and we are anxious to work with the House to make sure moms and babies are getting the healthy food safely that they need. Thank you.
In the bill that is in the Senate is the counter to the bill that is in the House. Bobby Scott, chair of the committee, Congresswoman Jahana Hayes has taken the lead on this in the House. We're very proud of her leadership in this regard and eager to hear what she has to say.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you just heard Senator Stabenow say, WIC recipients utilize formula at a rate double most other people in this country. About 50% of our babies rely on the WIC program for milk, and that is disproportionate. I spent this morning in my office returning calls to people in my district who had reached out. They started a Facebook group to try to figure out when and where they can buy formula. People are selling samples on the street. Mothers are watering down formula. Quite frankly, they're desperate. This is what I heard person after person after person that I spoke to this morning. But I'm very excited that Congress is taking action today to help our most vulnerable families. Over the past few weeks, Speaker Pelosi, in every meeting that we've been in, has raised this issue of this crisis about formula shortage. I'm excited to work with leadership and introduce the Access to Baby Formula Act, which really is a backup plan. There should have been a backup plan for when there was a recall for families who receive WIC, how they would be able to access formula. This bill provides a waiver to authorize the governing bodies to address emergencies, disasters, and supply chain disruptions, which will help us prepare for future events. I'm very excited to be able to work with Chairman Bobby Scott on this issue. I chaired the Nutrition Subcommittee on Ag, but WIC falls under Ed and Labor. So what this bill shows is that Democrats are aligned on this issue and really working together, not only to open up the supply chain to get milk and baby formula back on the shelves immediately, but long term to make sure that we have a plan in place so that this never happens again. I can tell you that I understand completely what parents are going through right now. I was a participant in the WIC program. I know what it means to not be able to stretch out milk through the entire month. And that's what I heard this morning on the phone from these parents and grandparents that I was talking to. What I'd like to tell them is that their words are not falling on deaf ears, that we see them and we hear them, and we are working very hard in Congress to address this rising concern. With everything going on right now, the last thing a family should have to worry about is feeding their children. So again, very excited that we are bringing this legislation to the floor of the House and that we will act swiftly and vote on it and move it to the Senate so that we can get some much needed relief to these parents and their children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johanna, for bringing your personal experience to the situation. As you were speaking, I was thinking of those who've gone before us in the Congress who established the WIC program, women, infants, and children. Yes. And it's in the long view of what we need for our children, and such an important initiative. Again, Congress, that falls under the Ed and Labor Committee. Congresswoman DeLauro has been tracking these issues as chair of the Appropriations Committee, but long before that. And she's going to give us the full picture of where we're going to go with the money and what we have to do. I'm very proud of our president, who has said we must deal with this quickly, but safely and cautiously. That's what the chairwoman is doing. Congresswoman DeLauro.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much for gathering us here today and for all of the work that's been done by my colleagues on what is a serious issue, what is a critically important issue. And if I might, I just would like to give a shout out as well to the chair of the Ag Appropriations Committee, that's Chairman Bishop, who has been engaged and involved in this effort as well. It is a very serious problem in this country. Parents, as you've heard, struggling, and parents are struggling. People today live paycheck to paycheck. They are now scrambling to find the formula to feed their babies in what is the wealthiest nation in the world. There are two parts to the infant formula shortage: safety and supply. We should not have to, parents should not have to choose between these two things. We should not be creating what is a false dichotomy. The bill that I introduced this morning immediately addresses the shortage, the here and now, by quickly trying to get product on the shelves and help to prevent it from not happening again. The shortage was caused in large part by corporate greed and consolidation. There are only 4 manufacturers of infant formula in the United States. Only 4. So that when one piece, Abbott, is pulled out of the equation, which services the WIC program, as has been stated here today, 1.2 million babies. They have the contract for that. When you pull that up, you see what you can then vision the shortage on the shelves. In this case, it was Abbott Nutrition put profits and production over people, and due to what is a disgraceful lack of oversight, is now causing parents and caregivers to struggle to feed their kids. The images, empty shelves, desperate parents, are heartbreaking. What the legislation does, it provides $28 million in new funding for the FDA. It will provide FDA urgently needed resources to address the shortage, to prevent fraudulent products from entering into the marketplace, to help acquire better data on the situation in the marketplace, and to prevent the shortages from happening again. We strengthen their workforce, focus on formula issues, and increase FDA inspection staff. In response to a question that I asked the FDA and how they would be able to review infant formula submissions, I was told that they have only 9 people to do this. And this would be coming from domestic manufacturers, foreign manufacturers, to be able to look to see if this is a quality project, if it meets our standards. And what this will also allow the FDA to do with the resources is to look at FDA facilities around the world. There are 7 in Europe, 2 in Mexico, and there may be others that may come online. So that what happens is that then we can be in touch and we can get that product that they are producing, again, from an FDA-approved source. And we have to making sure that we have a standard and of which to compare the product with. So the FDA plays such a critical role in ensuring that formula provides the full nutritional needs of infants and that it is manufactured in the safest way possible. Today, we are making sure that the lack of funding is not a barrier to getting safe formula to parents and to babies. Meeting the need today is necessary. No baby goes hungry. No parent has to struggle to find the food to feed their child. And the efforts for the future will help ensure that we are not forced to go back and recreate this desperate situation. This is it's not enough. As the speaker pointed out, people are doing different things. We're talking about WIC. We're talking about Energy and Commerce doing hearings, but we have to address have to have people who are accountable. You understand that at least 2 babies died, 4 more hospitalized. And I recently released a whistleblower report which highlighted a damning list of allegations of wrongdoing at the Abbott Nutrition factory that was producing the formula. Recalls happen, but this company has lied, it's cut corners, it falsified records to cover up misdoings at the sake of infant health. That's wrong. Just plain wrong. The Ag Appropriations Subcommittee is going to hold a hearing on Thursday with the FDA Commissioner. We have a hearing the following week with experts and stakeholders in the effort. An IG report has been ordered. That takes a while, as you know, but to look at accountability. There will be an additional piece of legislation which provides authority to more authorities to the FDA, and we'll look at the opportunity for the Defense Production Act. So the work is not done. We're going to continue, all of us, to work hard to get to the long-term root causes so that this does not happen again. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Frank Pallone.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and everyone really who's been involved in this, not only in the last few weeks, but long term. And I want to develop a little bit what Rosa said about the safety aspect of this as well as the supply aspect, because a lot of attention has been focused on the supply and, of course, the shortage, particularly with regard to Abbott, their product being recalled. But as has been mentioned by my colleagues, we have to look at this in both ways, right? I mean, I know that, I was the author of the Food Safety Act years ago, and some people came up to me, within the last few days and said, well, if they hadn't recalled the Abbott formula, then we wouldn't be in this mess today. And I was like, are you kidding me? Babies died, kids got sick. you can't look at it that way and say, well, we shouldn't do a recall, because over the years we've been very careful to say that there are problems here, and that if formula is contaminated, then it shouldn't be sold. And that's what Abbott was doing. And so the answer here is to look at both of these, make sure that we have the supply and we get rid of the shortage now. But in terms of what we have to do as the authorizing committee in Energy and Commerce, and this is what our hearing is going to be about next Wednesday, is what needs to be done in the future to make sure that this crisis doesn't happen again. And that involves not only supply, but also making sure that the way the FDA goes about determining what's recalled and what's contaminated is done often enough, the testing is done often enough, and quickly enough. And so one of the things that we've been looking at is the fact that right now we don't really have an immediate or quick way of finding out whether there is a shortage. And so one of the things we may very well do is legislation that says that they have to notify us about what kind of supply they have. They have to notify the FDA what kind of supply, and also that if we find this contamination, that this is quickly figured out how to correct it. So that the supply is back on the market again. These are the kinds of problems that we're facing. So I just wanted to say, just so you know, the hearing is next Wednesday. We have both the FDA Commissioner Califf, the Food Policy and Response Deputy Commissioner Yanis, and the Center for Food Safety Director Main are going to be at next week's hearing. And we have the three companies, Abbott, Gerber, and Reckitt, and senior people within those organizations, which basically those are the three companies that produce about 80% of the supply. And I also wanted to mention that tomorrow our committee has a full committee markup on the FDA user fee to reauthorize the way that we pay and authorize drugs. And one of the provisions that's in that package makes it easier for FDA to recruit and retain highly qualified staff across the agency, including areas overseas where we need inspection. And I believe that your appropriation bill pays for more staff and training of staff as well, inspectors as well. So these are all things that need to be done, and I just want to thank all my colleagues for everything that we're doing to deal with this problem immediately and also make sure that this does not happen again. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When you mentioned the user fees and everything at the FDA, it'd be important to see what the appetite is for a user fee for the food part of Food and Drug Administration. Because if we could get a user fee on the food side, we could have a much bigger budget for staffing and the rest on the food side of Food and Drug Administration. A. B, the FDA has no power to recall. We say recall, but it really is a moral suasion issue. The Food and Drug Administration can say something is wrong with this, and then the public reaction to it is effectively the company would then perhaps recall. But there is no power. We have it in the BBB, we've had it in the BBE in hopes that we could pass it there when we haven't been able to get it over time in other legislation that required a strong bipartisan vote. So in terms of recall, when we use that term, it is not the power of recall, it's the persuasion of a company recalling voluntarily. So you see, we have a stronger hand to play here if we would be willing to do so. There is also some attitude in the country that there is plenty of supply, it's just not all in the right places. But there must be a computer program that tells us where that is. If that is so, then let's get that moving right this minute into the mouths of babies. We fight all the time not to take food out of the mouths of babies, as some initiatives might result in. As a mother of 5, grandmother of 9, a long time ago for me, I can still hear a baby cry. My baby is hungry. A mother should not, a parent, dad, mom, grandparents, whomever, caregiver should not have to hear a baby cry without being able to fulfill the need, to anticipate the need. Again, it must be safe. We have to be cautious in how we proceed, but we have to do this as quickly as safely possible. So with that, we're pleased to take any questions. Yes,
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how this seems like it's going to FDA, but is there a world in which FDA can then put that money to the companies that'll actually be needed
No.
to overstep with
No.
production stuff, or it just helps on the approval side?
No, what this does is divide it up into infant formula and supply chain monitoring and assessment for $1.5 million. Health fraud, state partnerships, laboratory methods development, $3 million to the Office of Regulatory Affairs. Social media data capture, analysis to identify unsafe infant formula so we can track stuff online, and that's $500,000. Then it's infant formula and staffing. It's $23 million. The speaker spoke about if we are going to bring more companies online that are FDA approved, and that is either domestically or internationally, those facilities have to be inspected. FDA does not have the adequate inspection force to be able to do that and to do it in a timely way. The other piece, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to look at companies who want to try to provide us with a product who may not be FDA approved. That is a submission. 9 people. That's it. So the crux of this is providing infrastructure, if you will, in order to do what needs to get done, and that is about as quickly as possible how we get product in and get it on the shelves. And that is what this is about. It's supply chain, it's data, it's looking at fraud. My God, you could have anybody coming forward and say they do this, they do that, and so forth. Unless we have a standard to which to judge them by, and unless we can inspect and look at all of this, you know, we take a very big risk. And today, the speaker spoke about mothers, parents today are saying, okay, and that they go to a pediatrician and say, what should I do? And the pediatrician may even say, take a chance because it's maybe okay. But think about it as being a mother. You need to feed your baby, and then you're scared that if what you feed your baby is going to cause harm. So what we want to do is to provide the resources as quickly as we possibly can, get this done, then take up the issues of accountability. And I spoke about accountability at the FDA as well, because they dragged their feet for several months before there was a recall. And the speaker is right. We don't have any power of recall. It's the company who determines whether or not they're going to recall the product. Speaker, you go for it.
Says they've been working on this since February, but Congress is not acting until months later. So my question is, if the $28 million in emergency, the White House press secretary said that they've been tracking this issue since February. So my question is, if the $28 million in emergency funding and the changes to WIC had happened months ago, could Congress have helped prevent the catastrophic shortage that we're seeing today?
Look, can I just say this? The Biden administration has been taking action since February. And I just have 3 things there. You know, they provided more flexibility for the WIC program to boost accessibility. They worked with manufacturers to increase production and encourage importation of safe formula. So I think the bottom line is they have been taking actions, but we really feel that now more needs to be done, and that's why we're talking about Rose's bill, we're talking about the other bill with WIC, and then further, authorizing bills down the line, which is, what Energy and Commerce is looking at. But you just have to understand, and I'm not trying to be difficult, that this is complex. Like, one of the things that bothers me is that I found out in the last couple of days, I told you guys, that people are now ordering, I guess, through the mail, formula from Canada and other countries, and in some cases, that's been the Abbott stuff that's already been taken off the market here. And so, this is an issue where it's not just a question of supply, but safe supply. And that's part of the problem, is to make sure that this stuff that's being recalled is not being used, and that what we're going to use now is safe.
Well, USDA, I hear your question. USDA moved very quickly, as you heard Senator Stabenow speak about, in terms of they're only, and why you have the education and labor piece of legislation is to give WIC and the USDA more power. Because, in fact, Secretary Vilsack does not deal with moving the pieces around. He has provided flexibility to a beneficiary so that they can more easily get access to the product. What we're trying to do is to provide him with more authority, and he did that. Quite honestly, in the first stories that came out, speaking of, this was before I even knew of a whistleblower's report, I called for an inspector general investigation of a delay of from last October until a recall in February by the FDA. And why? Now that's going to take a while, okay? Now, but in the meantime, the issue and the crisis is now. So how do we, in the very short order, provide them with what they need in terms of FDA to be able to bring a product back? We're going to look at other pieces about strengthening their authorities and holding people's feet to the fire. We are going to investigate Abbott, and the chips should fall where they may. People have to be accountable, whether it is at FDA or whether it is at Abbott.
But I just may say, seeing the problem is very important, but understanding it very carefully is too. Some babies need a very special kind of formula. Only one manufacturer makes that. It became contaminated. You say when you find out about the issue, then you look into it. What is the nature of this? What is it that we have to address? That was one part of it. When Rosa, Madam Chair, referenced the babies who died, they were the ones who needed this special formula, and it has a special category, and that was contaminated. And that's sinful, but it was. And so that's one thing they'll be looking at. And then, of course, the fungibility of this, when everybody then runs to the next category, then you have the shortage. And this supply chain issue is one that is rearing its head in many ways. But when it comes to babies, it's the here and now and in this moment. I think that when all of this is done, I'm not associating my colleagues with what I'm going to say right now, I'm just saying it myself, I think there might be a need for indictment. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask, Senator John Cornyn expressed some doubt on whether or not $28 million was necessary. There may be other Republicans who share some of that skepticism that this money is so urgently needed, arguing that this might be more of a supply chain problem. I know you've addressed that, Congresswoman, but I'm curious, do you have concerns that Republicans in the Senate may not support this legislation?
I can't answer for what the Senate will do, but $20 million is it's a lot of money, 20 million with an M. But anybody who says that that's too much money to spend for the safety and well-being of our babies, I just don't agree with. Period. That's not. And this was a very crafted number. It wasn't, well, what's the most we can spend? It's what is the most effective we can spend.
And understand, in the piece of legislation, there is a provision that says that the FDA has to report to the House Appropriations and the Senate Appropriations Committee every week on the utilization of the funding so that we know what is happening and that they are accountable for the use of that fund.
One more question. Yes, ma'am.
Why is the WIC bill not on the schedule until Thursday? Isn't that more important than naming another post office earlier in the week?
Well, we have to have the regular order. Right now, the committee has the workforce development legislation on the floor of the House, which is very important to us. We went to rules today in order to bring the WIC bill to the floor, and of course it will have to go through the Senate as well, so it's not holding anything up. The Senate will be dealing, my hope and understanding is, with the Ukraine legislation the next couple of days.
One quick question about timing. The FDA has said that with their new guidelines on importation, they'll start to see improvements on the shelves in the next couple months. How quickly do you think the $28 million supplemental could yield results?
Well, yes. Let me address that in this way. And I read the guidance from the FDA, and while I believe it is a good step in trying to move forward, I am disappointed in this that we will look at both foreign and domestic facilities that are not FDA approved. I believe we ought to be doing business with FDA approved facilities, and I believe that would be a much quicker process, because if they are not FDA approved, as I pointed out before, you have to do the investigation, you have to visit, you have to do all of those things. So if we could go, and we have 7 overseas facilities at the moment. They're in France, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Ireland, in Denmark. So there are several where my view is that we could go. It's FDA approved. That product could be immediately brought back to the U.S. So in a much more timely way. I agree with you. We can't wait 2 months to have this happen.
Is that what your bill would help speed up the inspection?
No, yes, it would do that, and the bill also would allow for the ability to get the product from an FDA already approved facility. We have facilities that have passed inspections. Let's go there first, and then let's get a product back and get it on the shelves as quickly as we can.
So if you, sorry, one last question. If your bill is passed, how quickly do you think American supermarkets and stores will start to see the results?
Well, my hope is that, look, we think we got to pass it in the House, which we will do. We'll pass it we have to see about the Senate, and so as quickly as that process. And I wouldn't understand why anyone would not want to move as quickly as we can with giving people the wherewithal to get the product to bring it back here. Because this is not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. This is about the risk and the life of babies in this country.
If I just may say, there are a couple things happening. One is that we want to know, is there, as has been told to us, that there is product in our country. It's just a question of where it is and where it needs to be taken to. We've said, let's use the vaccine, shall we say, model of transferring to localities, if that's possible, because the FDA is not a transportation agency, and nor is the Department of Agriculture. But there are, that's what we're looking into. Are they private sector facilities that can move that? What is that? How much is that? Could be 80%. If so, we would have stuff on the shelf right away. But we don't know, and that's what we're finding out, A. B, remember, during COVID, it was almost impossible for the FDA to travel to foreign countries to inspect plants. So that has been a setback. I'm not just talking about baby food formula. I'm talking about other sources of FDA-approved products that would come to the United States. You know that, Frank. They were not able to travel or able to get into these plants because of COVID. So that is a setback. So we want it as soon as possible, right now. And why isn't it? And how much can we get fast, safely? The president keeps saying safely. Is Australia approved or not?
No.
They have supply. We have to see if they're approved. So it's not just a question of, oh, it's there, let's buy it, let's bring it in. Safety is very important in all of that. And our having our bill on Wednesday is not holding anything up, because it will still have to pass the Senate, which is occupied happily now on, not happily, but thank God, on Ukraine right now, so that they can do that tomorrow and then be on their schedule shortly thereafter. We would hope that this will be, in terms of the WIC bill, Congresswoman Johanna Hayes and Debbie Madam Chair Stabenow's bill, hopefully that would be overwhelmingly bipartisan. We'll see where this goes. We have to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.